Do you feel poor? Genuine question. What I've noticed is that most people over the age of 30 feel broke. And I'm not talking about just any 30-year-old that's not working, not really looking to boost their career, has no purpose, not trying to provide for their family. I'm talking about the 30-year-olds and up that have 2+ kids, married, working, maybe their wives are working, almost 100% sure their wives are working, and yet at the end of the month, they're going, I can't wait for the next check. I've got nothing left. I'm in debt and I don't know what to do. How is this so? I've got a good job. I'm not spending like crazy. I'm just providing for my family, and yet I still feel broke. And I was listening to this podcast the other day that was talking about how the middle class is actually the real broke, especially the lower middle class to middle class. The upper middle class still has a little wiggle room, not much, and it's going away. But there's just not much there. And the reason why is because if you're actually in poverty, the American government will provide for you. You'll have not the best of things, but you'll have enough. In fact, I was there. My family, we lost a lot in a move. We had to get on food stamps. All I could do was afford rent, and it was awesome. We were there for 3 months, but I can tell you, getting off of food stamps made me want to go back on food stamps. It's kind of the trap. And so getting out, I actually was poorer than when I had food stamps, and I hadn't made enough money to climb out and provide enough food. So there was actually a few months where we were not eating well while I was off food stamps because I was making just enough money. So today in this video, if you are that person, I want to show you that you're not crazy. I want to show you how to think about these kind of things because look, it's not looking like it's getting better, okay? And I'm gonna give you a little bit of a history lesson, not much, but I'm not just gonna tell you the problem. I'm a life coach, I go after the heart, and so I'm going to talk about how you get out of this and how to think about this. And I'm not going to give you here's how you become a billionaire overnight. I'm also not going to let you live in victim land. So if this is a video for you where you're like, oh my gosh, I'll never get out. This is never going to work. I'm screwed. This ain't for you. But if you are going, hey, what do I do about this? Because this is crazy. And am I crazy? No, you're not crazy. Here's a little bit of how we got here. And I'll give you a little of an analogy about this. Way back, hundreds of years ago, the British government who had colonized India had a viper problem. They had a snake problem, okay? And the snakes were taking over. It was bad. So what did they do? They incentivized removing these snakes. They might have been vipers, whatever. They incentivized by saying, hey, if you bring us dead snakes, we'll actually give you money. Well, the entrepreneurs said, okay, great, we'll bring you those snakes, but here's what else. We're gonna breed snakes, and then it's infinite cash flow. Well, the British government found out about that, and they ended the program. Well, the entrepreneurs just said, well, screw it, and they just threw all the snakes that they hadn't killed yet back out. So what happened? India ended up with more snakes than before the program ever existed. And that is the beginning of your problem. You see, in 1935, Franklin Roosevelt came out with a program because it was a depression where they came out with a ton of money for those people that were struggling, old people that were in poverty. They said, hey, we're not going to let this happen. So they signed into law, okay? Social Security, that's when it was born, 1935. But here's the deal. In 1965 is when we had Medicare and Medicaid. What does all this mean? And why did they do this? I've got a few things on this, and trust me, I'm not the biggest economic person, but here's the general idea. The thought was, what if we gave a little bit to the people who are probably gonna die soon, and they'll be good, and they don't have to be in poverty. They'll have health, they'll have, doctors, they'll be able to be taken care of on their last part of life. The last 5 years, really. But here's the problem. They lived longer than that. Life expectancy went further than that. So now, the people that are paying into this aren't just paying a little bit. These people are receiving money for years and years. And some of you might go, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, this is all great stuff. We should be able to do this. But the problem is, at that time, they didn't think about us because no one does. We might be the first generation that are actually thinking about our kids. But back then, they just thought, well, yeah, it would be nice. So what happens? Franklin Roosevelt does Social Security. 30 years later, Medicare and Medicaid with Lyndon Johnson. Now, Nixon in 1971 has to figure out how are we going to pay this money? Because at that point, we were on the gold standard. Now, I'm not the best at defining what the gold standard is, but the best way I think about it is every dollar was backed by an amount of gold, okay? So whenever you can't pay something, we call that debt. We owe all of this. People are outliving, are living way longer on Social Security than we thought. In fact, the first beneficiary of Social Security lived to be 100 when they thought, hey, 65 is really around the age that people died during that time. Well, she lived to 100. So thousands and thousands, as she rightly should, because it's a law now, but she only paid into it probably a few $100s, okay? So think about this. Now we owe money. So Nixon says, well, why should we have to be backed by gold? Let's just cut it off. And what that opens us up to is just print the money to pay down the debt. Now, when you print money, what happens to something when you have more of it? Does it become more or less valuable? We're actually seeing that in the diamond industry right now with lab-grown diamonds. If I can just make diamonds, if anyone on the street can just make diamonds, how valuable is a diamond? Well, how valuable is a dollar if you just keep printing and printing and printing? Less and less valuable. Now, you guys might be coming into this and going, okay, great, how does that affect me? Well, you have to think, how much can you buy with $1? Back then, even in the 70s and the 80s, someone literally with one job, a man with one job, could provide for his families. From the 50s, 60s, 70s, it kind of really started to end in the 80s. Could provide for his family, have 2 cars, send kids to college off of one job. Now you tell me, is that still possible today, not being a millionaire? And even for millionaires, it's pretty hard. They could save money, they could put money away, and it wasn't because these jobs had all these awesome offerings, pension plans. Actually, those made the problems worse. No matter where you're at, they made the problem worse, and that's a story for another time. So if you're watching this and going, man, I feel like I can't just do the most normal thing. I don't think I'm not gonna pay for my kids' college. I can tell you that right now. I'm not paying for my kids' college. Unless something drastically changes, I'm not gonna be able to put a down payment for my kids' houses. Do you know that like just 10 years ago, the average age for buying a home was like mid-30s, might have been like low 30s. Now it's 40 years old. Think about it, just 10 years ago. People are becoming first-time home buyers at 40. I remember in college waiting tables, and my friends that were waiting tables graduating college were able to buy homes. It's crazy. So, am I saying this to say you have no hope, there's nothing to do? No, I'm trying to say this to validate that you're not crazy. If you're looking at this and going, how did my parents make this work? Why do I feel so broke? It's because you are, and the middle class has been screwed. So, how do we solve this? What do we do about this? I can tell you right now, and you're gonna know this if you're hearing this, especially I'm really talking to the men here. Hey, the number one thing you're going to have to do is get a side job. If you have a profession, like a serious profession, corporate profession, I should say, you can become a consultant. This is not me making an offering. I'm not offering to train anything. I don't have a course. This is just what I've done. I took a skill, management, and used it to consult with small businesses, and it helped me help them and add some income on the side, and eventually became my full-time thing that allowed me to make a lot more money than having just a salary. Now, there's a lot of things I had to learn about taxes and making sure that I had the right LLC and all that stuff, and none of this is tax advice, but I will tell you that is one thing. 2, most of you probably have wives that work, but if you don't, like me, and the reason is personal, this is not me telling anyone that women aren't supposed to work or anything like that, but if you can homeschool for like the first 5 years of school, so up to 5th grade, that can be extremely beneficial to you. Being able to do everything at home. Now, it's a big investment, a bigger investment on the front end. But being able to have your wife at home holding down the fort, teaching your kids, will give you a flexibility and a freedom. Many of us don't realize the amount of money we spend on childcare. Just childcare is basically half of our wife's salaries. So if she stays home, she's able to do that, and she's able to help you with your career, with things that need to get done. Some of you are going, I get it. So what is the last thing that has to happen? This is probably the most important thing that you need to know. In this new economy that's happening, relationships are still king. Your business relationships, your network is now even more important than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And what's funny is back then, while they had more cash power, their networks were even tighter. Social media comes in, work comes in where wife is working, husband's working. There isn't time for relationships. I don't know if you've noticed this, but a lot of people are saying, man, I'm seriously lonely. Men, women, there's no real relationships forming. Now you might be in church and that might bring some relationships, but as a former pastor, I can tell you, it was still a struggle for most families to build real relationships, new relationships. So if you, person watching this, still watching this after however many minutes, are sitting there and going, I'm tracking with everything you're saying, then you know you have to become, quote unquote, the mayor of your neighborhood, your city, whatever it is. This doesn't mean running for political office. It just means in your industry, in your category, in your small neighborhood, in your suburb, can you become the person that connects businesses with solutions? Can you be the one where people come to find solutions? It takes time, but the relationships that form there will actually change your tax bracket. Your help, and you will be introduced to people that can help you meet new people that will need your services for more money. I have experienced this. It has been awesome. Now here's my last bonus piece. But if you can move out of big cities into smaller cities, 400,000 people and less, really 250 and less. You can do all of this and there's still a lot of business, a lot of opportunity. These towns are starting to grow. If you can move to these towns and build relationships, build networks, not only is your cost of living less, but your opportunity to make money increases. Let's be honest, living in big cities, whether it's Austin, Dallas, LA, Houston, while there's a ton of opportunity, the cost of living is insane. And let's be completely honest. Unless you just love being in places like New York City where there's a lot going on, there's a lot happening in the city. Living in the city sucks. There's no outdoors, there's nothing to go do. Everything is packed, everyone's busy, no one has time. It just sucks for your age group, 35 years and older. It really loses its flair once you hit 30. And you might be convenienced by just how close everything is, but you're inconvenienced by how many people there are and how much things cost. So there's a few things here that I've said, right? You've got to be the connector. You've got to find a way to find outside income through entrepreneurship. And lastly, I would say, if you can afford it, it's expensive. Moving is expensive. But if you make the move to the right city, your cost of living goes down. And let's be honest, with a lot of the remote work, you're able to still continue to do business and find opportunities and make more money. So if you feel poor, you're not crazy. But the way we get out of this is not by being victims. It comes by being solutionaries, by being the people that solve problems for other people and ourselves. And I think this is like the golden age. Even though we're dealing with our money doesn't go as far and things cost more. So we're double screwed. But in the same way, we have this opportunity now to set up next generations, really set up next generations. And the way we really solve this for the next generations is how we vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I will tell you, man, you've got to think about, does this person that I'm voting for, is their solution that the government should pay for more things? And if the answer is yes, what that means is you're screwing over your kids and their kids and their kids. But if the answer is cut spending and they actually can do it and they actually go out and do it, you're actually saving your kids, and maybe they will have it better than us. Because that's the dream. If I'm going to sacrifice, sweet, I've got to know who it's for. And if it's for the next generation, I'm down. And I hope you are too. Let's go.